Rely upon your ability to ask really good questions. But first, I want to thank all of you for coming to my fundraiser, holding across the district. I was born in a small town, New York City, actually a small part of New York City, the Bronx, which used to be a rather nice place, but it's not anymore. Wound up coming here by way of the Army. I joined the Army. The judge didn't say I had to, but I did join the Army. Started off as a private, worked my way up, graduated as a lieutenant colonel, spent most of my time in infantry and special forces. Did a tour in the Pentagon for 3 years, did a tour here in Leavenworth, my terminal tour for 3 years, and enjoyed every minute of it. I mean, when the public is buying you parachutes and altitude, what's to complain about? I mean, it's free jumps all the time. And thank you to the taxpayers for that. I appreciate it. Got out of the Army, started my own small business, and grew it. We got up to about 15 people working in the business. We were executive recruiters. We called on corporations, Fortune 500 corporations nationwide, found out what talent they needed in order to move forward, learned a lot about business that you wouldn't otherwise see, all kinds of businesses. And I learned a lot about business by signing paychecks every 2 weeks. And those are hard lessons, you know, and that was really a good education for somebody who grew up in the military where paychecks were signed, but not by me. So I enjoyed that a lot. Been in the Kansas Senate 6 years. It's been good, similar to some of the previous speakers. Got involved in politics after getting out of the Army in the same precinct project that Representative Esau was in. We turned the Republican Party in Leavenworth. It's one of the strongest and most active parties. No offense. And did a lot of there for different candidates. Was county chair for a number of different candidates. Brownback won on several of his elections. For Kobach, for several other guys that ran. Who, again, it's a matter of you identify with somebody, you like what they're doing, you like what their objectives are, and you feel like you have to do something to get things done. I mean, you can't just sit by the wayside. And it's like they say, you play in traffic, sooner or later you're going to get hit. And I wound up running for the Senate and eventually won that. And I had a great re-election logo that I put on, motto that I put on all my yard signs up here. It was that bygones be bygones, and managed to get myself reelected at that time. Now that district is interesting. We can talk about that later if you want to do that. I'm running for this job, for the 2nd Congressional District, because I believe that it's extremely important at this point in our country that we have the leadership and that we have the programs in place to be able to recover our American security. I want to tell you that in the previous administration, the American security, our armed forces, our border patrol, our immigration, our police, were all downgraded either in reality by budget cuts or with policies that sapped morale and brought down our ability to get our job done. I don't want to say anything bad about the folks in uniform or the way they were going. Don't misunderstand me. I got 2 children in uniform. Well, one who's getting ready to retire, and that really does make me think about that. But that has to be fixed. I identify with those veterans as commander of the local VFW post. I work with veterans, work with the Veterans Administration Hospital, and I really do identify with that. And there's nothing more important to this country, and there's no job more important for the federal government than the defense of this country. And that, we've been taking our eye off the ball there for a long time. And it's being restored now, and it needs to be continued. We need to get that back on the ball. It doesn't mean we have to spend a ton of money, but we got to do it right. The other thing that's extremely important is American prosperity. Our economy has been in the doldrums. It's been just, I don't have to tell you, it's been sad. And it's just beginning to come out. And frankly, we're lagging a little bit here in Kansas. We're doing better than we were to some degree, but we're still lagging a bit in Kansas, and it needs to move forward. We need to get things going in the right direction and moving a little bit more quickly. And all of that improvement that we've seen has come in the last year with one man doing it. Now, I don't like a lot of things that Donald Trump has done or said or tweeted. I mean, I just don't. And he wasn't my pick during the primaries. I picked a couple others, then another. Kept dropping off. This guy, I voted for him in the general, but he beat 18, is it? Strong Republican politicians. That alone is amazing. And then he beat, well, it's not such a big thing to beat her, but it was important. It was important to beat her because, Lord, save us, please, don't let that happen. And our prayers were answered. But he does not have a strong Congress that's helping him to get things done. And I'm concerned that he doesn't have a strong Congress on behalf of the American people to watch what he's doing. And to make sure he does get that agenda that he ran on, get it accomplished. Help him to get that accomplished and keep him from going off the tracks. Now, despite all the tweets and everything, I think he's doing a good job. I think he's doing a great job. So I was asked today by somebody I was talking to, what other president has ever accomplished so much in such a short period of time? Well, there are a couple who did a few things like Washington and a few like that, but it's a good point that was being made. And we need to make sure that we don't wind up being in a position next year where we have a Democrat Congress that's talking about impeachment 24/7, and that's what they'll do. That's all they'll talk about. Nothing else will get done. The improvement in our military and in our Border Patrol and INS is going to slide. And everything that's being done, has been done to help our economy is also going to start to slide. The only thing we're going to see is impeachment hearings all day long. And they're going to run that clock all the way until the next election. You can tell that's what they're going to do. Paul Davis says he will not vote for Nancy Pelosi. It doesn't matter. If he gets elected and if we lose the House to the Democrats, Nancy Pelosi is going to be the next Speaker of the House. She's got too much money to not be. That's not, she buys it, everybody knows that. So we can't allow Paul Davis to win. We have to stop him. We have to keep the Congress Republican, and we have to help the President to get done the things that we elected him to do. And with that, I'd be more than happy to take questions at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, it's good to see you guys. It's good to see such a good crowd here. I feel like I'm at home again, which I am. So I will go over my background a little bit. Most of you already know me, but I am a software engineer by trade. My husband and I live just south of Parker. We own and operate Tyson Ranch. My husband's 5th generation Lynn County, and for those of you that don't know, he was born at Memorial Hospital here. So we have strong ties to Ottawa. We're very proud of that. I graduated from K-State with the Bachelor's of Science in Math, Bachelor's of Science in Computer Science, and later, for you KU fans, my Master's in Engineering Management from KU. I am a software engineer. I've had the opportunity to work on projects large, small, mom and pop startups to international corporations, most notably NASA. I was a software developer on, actually a project manager for space shuttle support for NASA. I'm showing my age a little bit there. So, but it was a great project. It was fun. We had a good time. You know, when Lynn Jenkins decided not to run, I received several calls and several people asked me that I would consider running for her seat. I thought about it, talked to my husband about it. We had a long conversation. We decided there's nobody that's going to work harder and nobody that's going to represent you as strong with your Kansas values, with our Kansas values. I'm pro-life, I'm Second Amendment, limited government, individual freedom. You guys know where I'm at. You know how hard I work, and you know I'll do that for you. We don't need representation that will tell you one thing to get elected and then go up and do something different. We need somebody who's going to stand strong in our beliefs and not put their finger in the wind to see which is a popular vote. We need somebody that you can count on, and you can count on me. You can count on me to be there for you. You can count on me to stand strong for us, for the 2nd District. You can count on me to vote pro-life, to fight for pro-life. You can count on me to fight for our Second Amendment rights. You can count on me to fight for Kansas infrastructure. We not only need strong roads and highways, we need broadband as our infrastructure. It impacts our rural quality of life. We need somebody that understands agriculture. I'm that candidate, raised in a small agribusiness. I started working, I shouldn't tell you, it's actually illegal probably. In 4th grade, I went to my parents and asked for a job, and my dad gave it to me. But that's the way it is in Kansas. You start working when you're young. You know that work ethic, and you stick with it. And I'm proud to be a 5th generation Kansan. We choose to live here. You know, nowadays, you can live anywhere in the nation, and you can still communicate with your family and friends. We choose Kansas. We choose to live here. We're very proud of it. And we need somebody that understands Kansas, understands our values, and will work for us. I'm that candidate. You know, there's so many people that don't tell you where they stand, like I said. And you guys know me. I say what I mean, and I mean what I say. And I'll continue to do that. It's not just because of a position. You know, my palm cards, you've seen most of them because it's the same platform. Whether I'm running for the Kansas House, which I served for 1 term, or the Kansas Senate, which I'm on my 2nd term, or U.S. Congress, it's the exact same platform. And it should be. Limited government, individual freedom, traditional values, and economic development. I look forward to your questions, and I ask for your support, and I ask for your vote. It's critical that we join together and send a strong candidate to DC and have an extremely strong candidate against the Democrat opponent. They want this seat. Let's not give it to them. Let's work together and make a difference. Thank you.
Individual, and you know, once they're done, you know, I will kind of monitor or watch for people who have questions to ask, and then you can go ahead and do so. I'm going to go ahead and move this out of the way. And you need to get over here in this crowd. So let's go ahead and begin the questioning. We have a question from up front.
I'd like to ask Mr. Seltzer, what's your thoughts on the Kansas budget? Would the court keep blowing the damn thing up every time you pass it?
I think so. And so can I answer? I'll answer that, but can I guide everybody to my Facebook page? Because you'll see the cutest picture of a grandbaby you'll ever see. I put up today, so go take a look at it. So, yes, we need a constitutional amendment. I know a real effort was made to get that accomplished, and it looks like it's died now for this session, I think. Is that correct? But here's what we do need. Here's what we do need. We need a governor who is a champion on a lot of things. And I'm not seeing that leadership now. We didn't see it for the last 3 or 4 years. We did it in the term before, but we need leadership out of the governor's office that will get out and speak out on a lot of issues, including things like we just talked about, like ag, the school issues, the constitutional amendment issues. We need somebody who will lead the way, and we just haven't had that. That's one of the reasons I'm running for governor. because we've shown leadership in what we've done in the insurance department in so many ways. We can do that same thing for the state of Kansas.
Question?
Second candidate, would you support sending the National Guard down to our Mexico border?
That's a good question. You know, the states that border ought to be doing that. There's a couple of states that are not. California is one of those states.
Yeah.
They have the most at stake. They need to be supporting it. I'd have to study the issue more for Kansas. We're 3 states removed from it, so certainly the border states.
Drugs.
Yeah, that's right. The border states need to be there big time.
Question? Yes, Rick.
And Mr. Seltzer can answer this, and maybe those that are running for the U.S. as well, but as you discussed, Kansas lags a little bit because our commodity prices are down, our oil and gas leases prices are down. That's severely affected our tax base statewide and other places as well. But we're also lagging in a couple other areas, and that's population growth for the state of Kansas. We're not keeping up with the same rate as other states, so eventually we're going to lose representation at the federal level, which is going to cost us even more money. And I'd like to know what kind of plans do the 3 of you have to grow not only our economy, but we got to grow population-wise to keep up and to keep those federal dollars and to keep things flowing as well.
Could I say 2 real quick things, and then I can turn it over to you folks. But this issue of the Kansas growing and lagging behind is a contributing factor to that. People leave because they don't have jobs or don't have as good a job as they can get out otherwise. And here's another thing. Our governor should have been focused on a long time before now, and that is the out-migration of educated workers. We have an out-migration from the rural areas into the urban areas in Kansas, and from the rural areas and the urban areas to out of state because they have better opportunities. We have a low unemployment rate here, but not necessarily the jobs that they want. We need to be focused on recruiting some of the people who have left Kansas back into Kansas. We have all those kinds of issues. Over about 55% of the people who graduate from college that we have helped pay for here in Kansas are gone after 5 years. We saw in the Kansas City Star just the other day that over 10,000 people with bachelor's degrees from the Kansas City metro area had gone. And it seems like we don't have any focus on that. Two parts of that. Keep them from doing it in the first place by providing opportunity here, and then recruiting them back once they've gone. So we need somebody to focus on that. Good point.
Hello. This is a long-standing problem, as was just mentioned. At one time, Kansas had 8 representatives in Congress, 8. We're now down to 4, and as you mentioned, soon will probably be 3. We're going in the wrong direction, clearly. The city that my wife and I chose to raise our children in, Leavenworth, used to be the largest city between St. Louis and San Francisco, and it was growing. It was larger than it is now. Today, it's shrinking. And the main reason that it's shrinking, and I'm very concerned about this because a lot of the people who work on Fort Leavenworth or are assigned on Fort Leavenworth or work at the VA or the U.S. Penitentiary are living over in Missouri, not in Leavenworth. Platte City, Missouri is growing significantly with people that work in Kansas because of taxes. Taxes are lower over in Missouri, property taxes are. I've looked into it and I've talked to them. I've done everything except blow up the bridge across the Missouri River. And I've thought about that. But it's a serious problem. And there's a small microcosm of the problem we're talking about, the out-migration and loss of revenue to the state and so forth. And the problem is that we're taxing people to the point that they're leaving. And we have to stop that. And what we just saw happen in the Kansas legislature on Sunday morning is we increased spending significantly, and that's going to lead to higher taxes. did also see a good tax bill come through that I think is going to help quite a bit. And I want to congratulate Senator Tyson on the work that she did in bringing that tax bill to us this year. It raises the standard deduction and it restores a number of the other deductions that we took out before for medical care and other things. So we're trying to get back to letting people have their money, keep their money. Earn your money in Kansas and keep it in your pocket. That's not what's happening in too many cases. And it's having a bad effect on the economy and a bad effect on the population. It's having the results that you just mentioned. Thank you.
Well, part of that is infrastructure. As I said, I'm a software engineer. We need to start bringing those technology jobs that have gone overseas, we need to start bringing them home. Not only for the jobs themselves, but for our U.S. security. There is no need to be making our computer, our phones, everything in China or other countries. And the software that's being used to run these machines needs to be developed in the United States. These are great jobs that we can bring home to the U.S., and that's one of the things that I want to work on as a U.S. Congresswoman. I want to build a coalition with the Midwest legislators. I've already reached out to a couple of them. They're excited about the opportunity to build a coalition to bring jobs to the Midwest, to bring those technical IT jobs to the Midwest. As we do that, we'll flourish and other businesses will expand. We've seen that with the intermodal just up north of us, how that's starting to have a trickle effect to the economy around here. Not only that, we need to, and we're in a cycle, we hit that wind going down with agriculture. Well, agriculture's taken a hit, not just prices now. We're on the verge of being in jeopardy for our trade, international trade issues. And we know how critical NAFTA is and CAFTA, and we've got a tariff war going on. And you might not think, oh, well, that doesn't impact Kansas. It most certainly impacts Kansas and our economy. And so we need to be aware of it and somebody that understands that when they're representing us. The other thing I'm going to throw out there is our U.S. census, every 10 years, we are redistricted, as Senator Fitzgerald said. But one of the issues with that is we count residency, not citizenship. We need to count citizenship, and that needs to be changed at the federal level so that we are counting citizens, not residents. People think that illegal immigration doesn't impact us. It most certainly does impact us, and that's one of the ways, in a big way. Kansas will lose representation if this continues to our southern borders, to our southern states. We need to stop that, and we need to count citizens instead of residency. And we need to stop the illegal immigration and build the wall. That's simple. Protect our borders. I'll tell you, if you guys, I don't know how many of you are on Twitter or Facebook. Since I am a software person, I don't like to stay on there all night. But we are on there. And those of you, I don't know, do you know who Brad Parscale is? He's the campaign manager for President Trump. He tweeted out that I'm a great senator and will make a great congresswoman. We were very proud to have that comment. So I will work with this president in making this a great country.
Yes, Bruce.
Two people have mentioned it. I'd like to know for each of you where you stand in the pro-life, but not just where you stand, say you said for it or against it, but if you're for it, what have you done? What have you done to further the pro-life movement?
We're just going to go down the line on this, because these two guys aren't just standing there looking pretty.
Looking pretty good. Yeah, don't take any offense. Excellent question. 1973 with the Roe v. Wade decision, I became pro-life. Before that, I was pretty much, I think, like everybody else, who didn't think it was a big problem. Started to see abortion situations, questions coming up in some of the states, but Roe v. Wade, the court said We don't know when life begins, and to tell you the truth, we don't need to know. We don't, that's shorthand for we don't care. Now let me ask you a question. If you go into court and you say, yeah, I fired my weapon into the brush, it might have been a person in there, I don't know. Could have been, I didn't care. I fired anyway. That defense isn't going to work. You've got negligent manslaughter at the very least. But yet here's the Supreme Court of the United States saying the exact same thing. So if that court and our law does not protect you because you're a human being, you're in serious trouble. Our whole society, our whole legal system is in serious, we're all in serious trouble. The fact that you're a human no longer protects you. I got involved in politics because of the pro-life situation. Mentioned earlier the precinct thing that was being done by Kansans for Life. I'm a founding member of the local Kansans for Life chapter in Leavenworth County. I supported all those candidates I mentioned earlier because they were pro-life candidates. I've got 19 grandchildren. Francie and I, both of us, same ones. Imagine that. We're heavily invested in the future. Abortion is against the future. It's against nature. It's against humanity. They're killing people. Have I spoken out about it? Google me. Put in Steve Fitzgerald, Kansas, abortion. I've been taken to task by Planned Parenthood. I've been hit by papers in New York, San Francisco, and in between. They don't like what I have to say. I got beat up last week by one of the senators because I put a proviso on the budget that said no money will be spent for a Kansas institution that engages in experiments on aborted fetal tissue or destructive embryonic research. There's a slight oversight in the law that permitted it to happen, and we closed it with that. And I didn't expect it, but it turned out to be a storm in the Senate and in the press. I get beat up all the time for being pro-life. Like I said, do you Google, and it's not me saying it, it's them saying it. Thank you. Appreciate the question.
So I am pro-life, and it's a different reason than some people are pro-life. Both of my daughters are adopted. The one that I just asked you to Google for the grandbaby is my grandbaby. My oldest adopted daughter, that was her first child, is my only grandchild. But I can tell you, their birth mothers had a different option than to give life, both of my daughters. And I've got a gorgeous, gorgeous family now that would have never existed had their birth mothers chosen something else. So I will always be pro-life. We've done some things in the insurance department that are very clearly supportive of pro-life. Please go to my webpage or to my Facebook page and get a link to the insurance department. But I appreciate the question.
I've been pro-life from the start. My voting record is pro-life. I've been endorsed by Kansans for Life for each of my runs. But a couple of things that I've done, I haven't been the one authoring the pro-life legislation, and I'm not usually one of those that talks about the pro-life legislation, but I do support it. I urge my colleagues next to me to support it. But a couple of things I've done in the background are things that you might not think of directly. The first thing I did was recruit precinct people. That was a project that was actually started by Kansas for Life in the mid-90s, and we made sure that we recruited precinct people who were pro-life so that we could build pro-life people in the county level and at the state level, so that we made sure our platform in the state party was strong and strong for pro-life. The other thing I did is we've had several attempts to try and change the way that we select Supreme Court justices in our state. I mean, probably the biggest enemies we have to the pro-life cause is the Supreme Court. in Kansas, sorry. And before I even came into the legislature, I came in and gave testimony that we needed to change the way that we select our Supreme Court justices. I've voted for it every time that it's come up. I've worked with my colleagues to try and find ways for us to do that and find ways to eventually change the way we select so that the lawyers aren't selecting our judges, the people get to select the judges. Anyway, those are the things I've done, and I will continue to do what I can to support life in the state. Oh, one other thing is some legislation that you might not think of, and Ken would probably attest to this. We have an Adoption Agency Protection Act that got added into an adoption bill, and we're still fighting for that to make it through in the legislature this year. It's very important that we protect our existing agencies so that they can place adopted children with the families that they feel go with their agency's strongly held beliefs. If that doesn't pass, it won't be very long in the future before there are lawsuits against the agencies, and we will lose many adoption agencies. And then there will be a lot of pressure for young women to abort their babies instead, because there won't be any place to put them. We need to make sure that we protect our adoption agencies. And if, talk to your state rep and make sure that Adoption Agency Protection Act stays in the bill that's currently in conference, and we have a chance to actually concur on the floor to the changes the Senate made that put that back into that.
I'll just say you're not going to go wrong with any of the candidates up here on the pro-life issue, and that's something we need to be proud of. Just a few quick things. I've worked all my political life for pro-life candidates. I stated that earlier when I was speaking, but that was something that really drove me to be passionate about politics and understanding what the implication is of having pro-life elected officials on all levels, and the same thing with the precinct levels. This is why the Republican Party is as conservative as it is on a local level, the district level, and the statewide level. Is because we recruited pro-life precinct people. The other thing is I work with KFL all the time. I'm an active volunteer in different things with the different organizations and things that they work on. And so I enjoy working with KFL out of Wichita. That's where their state headquarters is at. But the other thing that I've done that ties right into this is I've worked with pastors to train other pastors on how you can speak in the church on these issues. A lot of churches get scared about speaking on pro-life issues, or a man and a woman when we went through that constitutional amendment back in 06, 07 about how to speak on these political issues in the church without violating the IRS rule. And so we went around and trained pastors on how to do that. So it's just a few things that I've worked on.
I am pro-life. I've stated that before, and I'll say it again. One of the things that I've done, I'm the only candidate in this race who's ever carried legislation and got it passed. I had the bill, got sponsors, Senate sponsors, and then we passed the legislation. It became law to defund Planned Parenthood. It was through Title X money, and it worked. So I'm not an in-your-face pro-life candidate. There's different styles, different attitudes, and I am more about getting it done than being the front runner in the fight. I want results, and that's what I work for, and that's how I work. I'm the only candidate in this race who has been endorsed by a national pro-life group. Susan B. Anthony List has endorsed me. I have 2 national groups that have endorsed my candidacy. Also, it's the most important endorsement, though, is you, the voters. That's what's critical. And you guys know where I stand on these issues. I've proven myself, and I will stay strong for the cause.
Thank you. Question here.
This might be for the gubernatorial and maybe congressional candidates. What, do you support keeping Osawatomie State Hospital open and Osawatomie, or what options do you think are available?
What was the question?
Osawatomie State Hospital.
So the question is, should we keep Osawatomie State Hospital open? I will
Or
say,
move it somewhere else?
I will say this, we need to invest in our assets, our state assets. We haven't invested in our state assets in a way to keep them maintained. So I'll have to look at the whole picture. Osawatomie has a long-standing tradition of good quality care, underfunded, and the asset hasn't been maintained. So that's one of those cans, I think, that's been kicked down the road over time, is taking care of our state assets. That includes prisons, all of those. So we'll come back to that, but I do think that Larned and Osawatomie both are key to their communities. There is no doubt about that.
The answer is simple, yes. A little more detail. I've been an advocate for better mental health ever since I've been involved in politics. It's obvious to me. I have several families that are friends of ours that have children, some of them now in their 30s, who are serious mental health problems, and they can't get the appropriate care, and they're always in trouble with the police. So in dealing with the police, the sheriff, friends of mine, and the judges, and then I was responsible for the Senate side for the corrections budget, and I got to see what was going on more on corrections side. We've got a serious mental health problem, and our main provider of mental health care is our prison. 36% of the prisoners in Kansas are certifiable. In Wyandotte County, 40%. Sheriff Ash says 40% of them in his jail are clearly, and they can't get help. And they wind up being a problem with the police, and then with the courts, and then with the jails, and then with the prisons. It's a problem in our emergency rooms. We're paying a lot of money to do things the wrong way. We need to start spending some money to do things the better way, the best way we know how, and that is with a better mental health system that we used to have to a large degree, and we've neglected, as has been mentioned. The community health centers need to be better funded, and Osawatomie definitely needs to be brought up to the level that it could provide the care that we really need. They do a good job, but we're being overwhelmed, and we're feeling it throughout the community, throughout Kansas. And it's not just Kansas. It's throughout the United States. We are not doing a very good job on mental health. My answer is yes.
I absolutely support Osawatomie State Hospital. You guys have known that. I've been fighting for it for years, and I will continue to fight for it. But it is a bigger issue than just Osawatomie. We do have a mental health issue in the United States, and it needs our attention. You know, I say that, you've heard me say it several times. We help those who cannot help themselves. And a lot of times families with mental health issues, they don't have the resources. They don't have the time or the knowledge or the money and so we need to step up as a community and help those individuals and make sure that our law enforcement does have the resources that they need. One of the problems with Osawatomie right now is we're at 140-some bed capacity. We were at over 200 beds. That's a large number for over a 60 county catchment area. We've got a moratorium, and we can't get the Department of Administration to lift that moratorium for Osawatomie State Hospital. So until we get the number of beds up, we're going to continue to have problems. I'll continue to fight for the hospital, for the employees that work there, and for the patients in the mental health system in Kansas. And I will throw this out too. It's really disappointing. We aren't getting the money where it needs to be. That school funding bill that passed, that massive spending bill, it had money in it for a community mental health services database. Not to get to the patients or how's the database going to better serve keeping electronic medical records? We need to get the money where it needs to be. And it's the same thing with the schools. The money needs to get to the classroom and the teachers. We keep spending it elsewhere. It's not about how much now, it's how we're spending it. We had over a $300 million increase last year in a two-year period for K through 12 spending. Saturday night, over a $500 million increase over a 5-year period. So in 6 years, that's almost a $1 billion increase to K through 12 spending. We're already spending $4 billion. We're over $6 billion in debt for school bonding. $6 billion, that's more than KDOT. We really need to look at where we're spending the money and how we're spending it. And mental health needs to be a part of that equation with the schools, with law enforcement, and with the mental health system.
Secretary of State candidates, please. It was started and then closed down, the federal investigation into voter fraud. Would you support and be cooperative with the federal government should they reopen that? Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, President Trump appointed a committee, the Vice President chaired that committee along with our current Secretary of State. And, you know, they were really tasked to look across the board on voter irregularity, voter fraud and different changes. I believe they should have that. I mean, we should look at that at our state level too, but I think we should have that always on a federal level. It just got too political and they were fighting, they didn't have the budget to hire enough lawyers to fight the lawsuits that all the other organizations were suing them for. And it was easier to shut down the actual committee than it was to pay for the attorneys to fight the lawsuits.
I think it's rather smart of them to actually move it under Homeland Security so they can still continue to do it, but not do it out with all the fighting that's going on in the press. And I know that our current Secretary of State's office is cooperating in every way with that.
Continue.
The whole purpose is to find, do we have a lot of voter fraud going on, or how much, or where are the problems? Kansas, because we have required citizenship and we have voter ID, we have voter fraud a lot faster than a lot of other states do. And so we're fairly good here, but I can think back to a race that happened in Johnson County about 10 years ago. I had a friend who was running for the state house. He lost by 7 votes. Come to find out that about 21 Democrats came from a different district into that district and voted. Couldn't find out, you know, that they even had sworn affidavits that yes, I voted for the Democrat candidate, and I really shouldn't have, because it's supposed to be handled. It wasn't in. It's hard to prove that it was intentional on their part, because what should have happened is the election office should not have counted that vote because they were not in the proper jurisdiction. But the timing of it was a brand new election commissioner who had only had a couple of months on the job, and it was basically a perfect storm that happened in that case. But even a little voter fraud can spoil the pot. So I'm glad that we gave prosecutorial powers to the Secretary of State to make sure that voter fraud got prosecuted, because most DAs would rather spend their time working on personal crimes. Murder is a lot more important than voter fraud. So.
Questions? Oh, okay. Great.
Back to the Secretary of State candidates. Now, I will say the website's wonderful. I've been into it in the past. The customer service is great. But would you as Secretary of State reach out, because the Secretary of State, as far as small business, is so tied to the Department of Revenue when you're trying to deal with making sure your license is in and you've paid all your taxes like you should, that I ran into a situation where Secretary of State had me one way revenue had another, and there was no communication between the two. What is your thoughts on communicating between the different departments when it comes to small business?
It's always a challenge to get two agencies to talk to each other, even in the state government, because everybody builds their own little fiefdom, as it were, and they want the other agency to do it their way. I've worked with, the software I've worked on has always had to work with software from another company, and so I've learned over many years that you just have to deal with reality however it comes at you. And so I think that's something that could be accomplished within the Secretary of State's office and not require too much from the Department of Revenue. However, it would be nice if we could get a better communication, especially with the DMV and with the Department of Revenue in keeping the records and transferring the records back and forth. And part of that is modernizing the equipment within the Secretary of State's office and being more consistent. One other thing we did this year, and it just passed in the legislature, was to set up an oversight for all the security across all the agencies. And I think in addition to having a central security, you will now see a lot more cooperation between the different agencies and communication, because they all have to be updated to the same set of security standards. They'll update to other standards. A lot of it's the software, making sure that the same updated version of software is running every place, so that there is better communication on data between the different agencies.
This is exactly kind of what we need. You need to have a one-stop shop for our state government where you go and have one username, one password that you will remember, and be able to go in there and fill out your information and have that be the same information for filing your taxes, or for your business, or for the Secretary of State's office, or the Treasurer's office if you're trying to see if they have any money there for you. But we need to be able to have that. You got to upgrade the system, and that's kind of one of the things in the Secretary of State's office. The other thing we can help people with is the people that want to create a business in Kansas. How do you know what you need to go to? How do you know you need to go to the Secretary of State's office and get an LLC? Do you need to go to the Department of Revenue and get your reseller's tax certificate? What else is out there that you may need to obtain before you can become a legitimate business? Have a one-stop shop where you can say, okay, I want to go into this industry. I want to, have a storefront on that Main Street. What licenses or what do I need to file to get that? And just have that one-stop shop. That is something we can do. I know the agencies do work together. They try to improve this, but you got to get your technology to keep up with the current times. And so there's a lot of potential in that area. It's something that I am key on wanting to work on.
There you go again.
Yeah, I know. There goes Ethan. Never mind. Had a senior moment.
Okay. All right. We're going to wrap this up. I'm going to give each candidate, to start with Caryn, a last word, and then I have a couple other announcements to make. So.
Well, thank you guys for your time. Thanks for coming out and listening to how I'll represent you at the 2nd Congressional District. I appreciate all you guys, and you know that I will work hard, as I said. I've got a proven record on that. I care about this community. I care about the 2nd District, and I care about Kansas. We need somebody that is going to, one of us. You know what? I'm your neighbor. I'm your friend. I'm the gal down the street. I'm the person you see in the grocery store. I'm one of us. Grassroots, conservative, Republican. That simple. That's who I am, and that's how I'll represent you in Congress. So I ask for your vote, and I ask for your support. Thank you.
Well, thank you again for coming out tonight, being a part of this, and your engagement with the Republican Party. It means a lot to try to get things accomplished in our state. You know, I would ask for your support for my campaign for Secretary of State. I feel like I am the most experienced candidate in this race, having run in an administration or department as county clerk for the last 3 terms. I have a full understanding of what it takes to get business done, and I know what it takes to run secure elections. So I'd ask for your vote on August 7th.
Thank you, Ron, and for inviting us all this evening and letting us come talk to you. It's great to see such an involved crowd here, and I'm enjoying meeting people all across Kansas and seeing the real Kansas and not what the papers describe as Kansas. So I look forward to talking with you individually, and I ask for your support.
So, real easy, couple points. KS for KS, I think y'all remember. Or if you need more help, Alka-Seltzer or Bravo Seltzer. Somebody here remembered 4 years ago when I held up a bottle of water and said, remember Bravo Seltzer water, whatever it is. Do remember that. Also, I know that your Republican chapter here, Central Committee, needs funds, so I'm going to make a small donation for this chapter here, but I'd encourage everybody here to do that too. I know every chapter struggles, and I'll do my small part on that. Thank you.
I'll get ready.
There she is. She's ready. She's ready to go. And I'd say this is the last thing. Remember, I'm the only gubernatorial candidate that showed up here tonight. Remember that I cared enough about Ottawa and Franklin County to be here to talk about a better way to lead this state. Thank you.
I echo the other candidates. Thank you for coming out. We are a self-governing people. That was what the American Revolution was about. We wanted to be self-governing. Consider this. If we don't govern ourselves, the alternative is not good. So with all the difficulty and pain in the butt and having to go do things and listen to a bunch of candidates, it's worth it to be an informed person who's in charge of your own government. Keep in mind one thing. When we go before the judgment seat, you and I are not going to be judged with the slaves and peasants of history. We're going to be judged with the pharaohs and the Caesars and the emperors and the kings, because we're in charge here. And what happens in our country is our responsibility. And we can't say, oh, we couldn't do anything about it if we didn't try. We're responsible for what happens in our country. And what you're doing in terms of coming out and supporting candidates and getting involved is exactly what we need to get more Americans doing. I appreciate you coming out here very much. I want you to remember, I've put kids through college. I know what that's like. I know what it's like being retired, living on a fixed income. I know what that's like. And I understand a little bit about what's going on. I was on a farm, was a partner on a farm. It's a very interesting and humorous story that I put behind me as fast as I could and as far as I could. And I'll tell it to you if you're really interested. But I appreciate you coming out, and I appreciate the opportunity to meet you and speak with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.